how Cuba became an accidental leader in organic urban farming. Imagine walking through the sun-drenched streets of Havana. You hear the rumble of a 1950s Chevy, the distant rhythm of Son Cubano, and the calls of street vendors. But as you turn a corner away from the tourist-heavy plazas, the scenery changes. Right there, nestled between crumbling concrete apartment blocks, is a lush, vibrant explosion of green. Long rows of lettuce, heavy bunches of scallions, and bright orange marigolds are growing in neat, raised beds. This isn't just a community garden, it's an organopónico, and it's the reason why Cuba is often called the most successful experiment in sustainable agriculture on the planet. The wildest part, Cuba never wanted this. This wasn't a Go Green initiative launched by environmentalists or a trendy move toward artisanal salads. It was a desperate accidental revolution born out of the terrifying prospect of a nation going hungry. To understand how Cuba became an accidental leader in organic urban farming, we have to look at a story of collapse, survival, and some of the most impressive MacGyvering of nature the world has ever seen, the day the world stopped. To get the full picture, we have to travel back to the late 1980s. At that time, Cuba was the model of industrial farming. Because of their close relationship with the Soviet Union, Cuba had a very specific role. They grew sugar, and they grew a lot of it. The Soviets would buy that sugar at prices way above market value, and in exchange, they sent Cuba everything. They sent tractors, petroleum for fuel, and massive amounts of synthetic fertilizers and chemical pesticides. Cuba was essentially a green revolution poster child, using more chemicals per acre than even many farms in the United States. Then, in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. By 1991, the Soviet Union was gone. For Cuba, this wasn't just a political shift. It was an existential catastrophe. Overnight, the island lost 80% of its international trade. The petroleum stopped coming, the fertilizer stopped coming. The food imports, which accounted for nearly half of the island's calories, vanished. Fidel Castro declared a special period in peacetime. It sounds like a polite term, but it was a time of brutal hardship. The average Cuban lost 20 pounds. There were blackouts for 16 hours a day. Domestic animals like oxen, which hadn't been used in decades, were suddenly brought back to pull plows because there was no gas for tractors. Hunger as the mother of invention. In those first few years of the 90s, people were starving. The massive industrial farms in the countryside were failing because they couldn't get their produce to the cities. There was no fuel for the trucks, and the tires were worn down to the threads. This is where the accidental part of the story begins. Ordinary people in Havana, Santiago, and Camagüey didn't wait for a government memo. They were hungry now. So they started planting. They planted in window boxes. They tore up their ornamental front yards to plant beans. They found patches of dirt behind hospitals and schools and planted cassava and tomatoes. This was guerrilla gardening on a national scale. But they had a massive problem. The soil in the city was terrible. It was full of rubble, lead, and old concrete. And even if they had the best soil in the world, they didn't have a single drop of chemical fertilizer to help things grow. They were forced to farm organically because there was literally no other option. It was organic or nothing. The birth of the Organopónico, seeing the success of these tiny hunger gardens, the Cuban government did something surprisingly flexible for a centralized bureaucracy. They got out of the way. They passed laws that allowed anyone to use vacant state land for free, as long as they grew food on it. They turned to their scientists, men and women who had spent their careers studying high-tech chemical farming, and told them, forget everything you know. We need you to figure out how to grow food using only what we have on the island. This led to the creation of the Organopónico. Since the city soil was trash, they built raised beds. They used whatever they could find, old bricks, concrete slabs, even wood, to build long, waist-high containers. Instead of using chemical fertilizers, they turned to vermicompost, worm poop. They built massive centers where they raised red Californian earthworms and fed them organic waste, turning it into the richest fertilizer imaginable. They started using green manure, which is basically growing specific crops just to plow them back into the soil to give it nitrogen. Outsmarting the bugs without spray. If you've ever tried to grow a tomato, you know the bugs usually get to it before you do. In the old days, a Cuban farmer would just spray a cocktail of Soviet chemicals and call it a day. Now they had to be smarter than the bugs. They pioneered a system of integrated pest management. They started planting trap crops. For example, if they knew a certain beetle loved sunflowers more than lettuce, they'd plant a row of sunflowers around the perimeter. The beetles would swarm the sunflowers, and the farmers could manage them there while the lettuce stayed safe. They used companion planting. They found that the smell of marigolds and garlic acted as a natural force field against many pests. They even started breeding beneficial insects, good bugs that eat the bad bugs, and releasing them into the urban farms. By the mid-1990s, these gardens were everywhere. You could walk out of a hospital and buy a head of lettuce that had been grown 20 feet away. The food miles, the distance food travels from farm to plate, went from hundreds of miles to literally zero. A cultural shift from shame to pride. At first, many Cubans felt a sense of shame about the urban farms. It was a reminder of their poverty, a symbol of the fact that they couldn't even afford a tractor. But as the years went on, something shifted. People started to notice that the food from the Organopónicos tasted incredible. It was fresh, picked that morning, and hadn't been treated with harsh chemicals. The urban farmers became respected figures in their neighborhoods. The government also realized that these small-scale urban farms were much more resilient than the old industrial ones. If a hurricane hit, or if the price of oil spiked, the urban gardens kept right on producing. They didn't need a global supply chain, they just needed sun, water, and compost. By the early 2000s, Havana was producing about 90% of the fresh produce it consumed. Think about that. A city of over 2 million people, largely feeding itself from gardens tucked into the urban fabric. Why the world is watching. Today, the rest of the world is looking at Cuba not as a relic of the Cold War, but as a blueprint for the future. We are currently living in a world where industrial agriculture is under massive pressure. We have depleting topsoil, we're overly reliant on fossil fuel-based fertilizers, and the transportation of food creates a massive carbon footprint. Cuba has already solved many of these problems. They did it because they had to, but the lessons they learned are universal. Decentralization is key. Having thousands of small farms is much safer for a food supply than having 3 massive ones. Waste is a resource. Cubans view food scraps and manure not as trash, but as the fuel for their next crop through composting. Nature is the best chemist. Between worm composting and companion planting, they've proven you don't need a lab to have a high-yield farm. The reality check. Now, it's important not to romanticize this too much. Farming is hard, back-breaking work, and doing it without machinery is even tougher. Cuba still struggles with food shortages, particularly with staples like rice, meat, and milk, which are harder to grow in small urban plots. Life in Cuba is still very difficult for many people due to the complex web of politics and economics. However, the Organopónicos represent a genuine triumph of human spirit and ecological intelligence. They prove that when the modern world breaks, we can fall back on the wisdom of the earth, building your own accidental garden. The beauty of the Cuban model is that it's incredibly accessible. You don't need a tractor or a PhD in chemistry. You just need a little space and a change in perspective. And if you want to bring a little bit of the Havana spirit to your own home, you can start small. You don't need great soil. Remember, neither did they. Use containers or build a raised bed. Start a compost bin to turn your kitchen scraps into black gold. Plant some marigolds next to your tomatoes. Cuba showed us that even in the middle of a concrete jungle, life wants to grow. It showed us that organic isn't just a luxury label for people with fancy grocery stores. It's a resilient, powerful way to feed a community. The Organopónico is a monument to the idea that even when the lights go out, the garden keeps growing.